the guise of their legitimate construction empire. For 3 years, I had been tracking the Moretti family business, not because of the name, though that was unfortunate, but because they had been laundering cartel money while treating undocumented workers like disposable tools, threatening deportation whenever anyone demanded safety gear or fair wages. 18 lives had been lost in preventable accidents. 18 families ruined, so my Uncle Tony could afford yet another luxury yacht. The sun dipped behind the courthouse as I gave the case files one last careful read. Tomorrow, I would testify as the lead U.S. Marshal on Operation Bloodline, the undercover investigation that had finally brought the Moretti construction syndicate to justice. Tomorrow, my family would discover that the college dropout they had mourned for 23 years had actually been living under multiple deep-cover identities, tackling cases that spanned human trafficking to international terrorism. Yet tonight, I was just Vicky, the failure, the fragile one who supposedly couldn't handle responsibility. 23 years earlier. "Victoria's not cut out for this line of work," Uncle Tony said from across the kitchen, his voice drifting toward me as I huddled over my criminal justice textbooks. I was 19, juggling 2 jobs to fund community college, surviving on 4 hours of sleep a night, yet still managing a 3.8 GPA. "She's too soft, too sensitive. Look at her. She can barely keep her eyes open." My mother nodded in agreement, sliding a check toward my cousin Marco, who had just flunked out of his second university, yet somehow remained the family's golden child. "Marco has that natural leadership quality," Tony continued. "That's what you need in law enforcement." I had applied to every federal program I could find, DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, but each application remained a secret during family dinners, where the conversation revolved around whether I'd survive another semester or if I should simply marry well and settle down. Marco leaned back in his chair, a beer already in hand at 6 p.m. Besides, Vicky's got that whole bleeding heart thing. Always crying about some sob story. You can't do the job if you're worrying about feelings. "Exactly," Tony said, nodding approvingly. "This family has a reputation to uphold. We don't need," he gestured in my direction, "weakness tied to our name." The weakness he meant was my habit of asking questions. Why their construction sites were so dangerous, why workers vanished after accidents, why the ledgers never seemed accurate when I helped with summer accounting. The weakness was caring about human life. I stopped asking questions after Tony took me aside, speaking in his most persuasive tone. My college tuition, he explained gently, could disappear as easily as it had appeared. Family businesses demand loyalty. "Victoria, you understand that, right?" I understood perfectly. I also understood that every federal academy I'd applied to had listed me as pending character references I couldn't provide without exposing the investigation already underway in their books. So I vanished instead, holstered and poised, every movement reflecting my 23 years in federal service. I stood as the bailiff administered the oath. My family remained frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. "Marshal Moretti," the prosecutor began, "please state your current role and your years of service." "I am a deputy U.S. Marshal with the Los Angeles District, currently assigned to the Fugitive Task Force," I replied steadily. "I have served in the U.S. Marshal Service for 21 years. Prior to that, I spent 2 years in the DEA's Undercover Operations Division." A sharp intake of breath came from the audience. "Likely my mother." "And your connection to the defendants?" the prosecutor asked. "Anthony Moretti is my uncle. Marco Moretti is my cousin. Moretti Construction Company was our family business, until this investigation uncovered the truth." "Marshal Moretti," the prosecutor continued, "can you explain to the court how this investigation originated?" I pivoted slightly, catching my family in my peripheral vision. Uncle Tony's face had drained of color. Marco was nervously whispering into his attorney's ear. My mother seemed on the verge of collapsing. 3 years ago, I began, a joint federal task force reached out to me during an investigation into workplace fatalities and human trafficking within the construction sector. They required an agent with organic access to Moretti Construction's internal workings, someone the family would trust implicitly, someone they would never imagine was building a case against them. 2 years later, the U.S. Marshals Training Academy in Glencoe, Georgia, proved everything my family had assumed I couldn't handle. 6 grueling months of tactical drills, firearms mastery, legal instruction, and psychological evaluation. I finished second in my class. Meanwhile, my family believed I was in rehab. I let them tell themselves stories of addiction and breakdown, let them shake their heads in pity whenever someone asked about Tony Moretti's niece who couldn't get her life in order. It was simpler than explaining why I had vanished entirely, why disappearing was the only way to do what needed to be done. The truth was, I had been recruited precisely because of my family ties. Not in spite of them, because of them. The Marshals had monitored Moretti construction for years, tracking patterns of fatal workplace accidents, suspicious financial transfers, and the mysterious disappearances of injured workers. They needed someone with organic access, someone the family trusted implicitly, someone who seemed too fragile to be a threat. Present-day courthouse steps. The steps thrummed with the energy of reporters, federal agents, and legal staff as I completed my final preparations. In a few hours, the largest RICO case in the district's history would commence, and I would take the stand as the key witness against my own blood. Special Agent Martinez, my FBI contact, approached with a tablet displaying news coverage. Marshal Moretti, the family's legal team is already spinning this as prosecutorial overreach, he said. They claim they were unaware of any illegal activity. I didn't flinch. The Moretti reputation was built on plausible deniability and convenient ignorance. And the workers? Martinez asked. They're safe, I said. All 18 families have been relocated to protective housing and are in the process of obtaining legal status. The children are enrolled in school. They're going to be okay. That was all that mattered. 18 families, some of whom had feared speaking up for years, now had protection and a chance at legitimate lives. Their testimony would back up the financial records I had gathered over 3 years of wearing wires at family dinners, holiday gatherings, and business meetings. Martinez studied me. Are you ready for this? I nodded. Testifying against my family wasn't about betrayal. They stopped being my family the moment I discovered their wagers on which worker would die next. I had found the betting slips in Tony's office safe, literal wagers on workplace deaths, treated like a grotesque office lottery. The memory still sent adrenaline surging through me. The next morning, the federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles was packed. Media crews, agents, attorneys, and in the back, my family, all of them. I hadn't seen them in 23 years. Uncle Tony had aged poorly, the stress and excess taking their toll. Marco hadn't changed at all, which somehow made it worse. My mother sat between them, her expression the same, disapproving, concerned look she had perfected during my teenage years. They didn't recognize me. 2 decades of tactical training had transformed more than my posture. I was 42, wearing a meticulously tailored federal uniform with insignia too small to read from the back of the courtroom. My hair was short and practical, my shoulders broader from years of physical conditioning. My face bore the hardness of experiences they could never imagine. Mostly, though, I was invisible to them because they had never truly seen me at all. The prosecution calls Deputy U.S. Marshal Victoria Elena Moretti to the stand. The courtroom fell into an immediate, suffocating silence. I rose, badge glinting at my belt, service weapon properly holstered. "And why wouldn't they suspect you?" the prosecutor asked. "Because they believed I was a drug-addled college dropout 23 years ago." The stir in the courtroom was audible. In the back, I heard my mother choke on air. "Marshal Moretti, during those years, what was your actual career path?" I recited it like a military citation, which in many ways it was. 2 years in DEA undercover operations, 21 years in the U.S. Marshal Service, specialized training in human trafficking, financial crime, and organized crime. Commendations for multi-state operations. Current assignment, lead deputy on the West Coast Fugitive Task Force. And contact with your family during that time? None. Operational security required complete separation. What do they believe had happened to you? They were told I had suffered a mental breakdown connected to drug use and was in long-term rehabilitation. They were warned not to reach out. The testimony was brutal, but necessary. Every detail of their financial misconduct, every recorded conversation, every witness account of worker intimidation and safety violations flowed through my words like water breaking through a dam. The defense attorney, sleek and predatory, tried to find a crack. "Isn't it true you've held resentment for years?" That this investigation is personal revenge. I met his gaze. Sir, I spent 23 years protecting people your clients murdered. Revenge would have been far simpler and far less paperwork. The courtroom chuckled despite itself. No further questions. Afterward, in the courthouse hallway, they waited. All of them. My mother was first, tears streaming. Victoria! Vicky! I don't understand. You told everyone I was a drug addict. I did, I said quietly, for 23 years. You let people believe I was weak, worthless, a family disappointment. She reached for me like I was still 19. I stepped back, firm but calm. Uncle Tony pushed forward, face red. You destroyed us, your own family. We raised you. You killed 18 people, I said evenly. You threatened families with deportation to silence complaints. You ran bets on which worker would die next. He went silent. Marco followed, grasping for excuses. Vicky, come on. Family is family. We can fix this. No, I said, authority carrying the weight of 2 decades of service. We can't. You are under federal indictment for racketeering, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. Family ended the moment you profited from deaths. I am a law enforcement officer. You are criminals. My mother still reached, still clinging to the broken version of me they had invented. But we love you, she said. You love the idea of me as a failure, I told her. It made your choices easier. The real me, the one who spent 23 years saving lives you were destroying. You never wanted to know her. I turned to leave, pausing only to add, for what it's worth, you were right about one thing. I was too soft for your world. I could never have lived with 18 deaths on my hands. 6 months later, justice was served. Tony received 25 years to life. Marco 15. The construction company was liquidated, with proceeds going to victim compensation. The 18 families I had helped relocate sent me cards on the anniversary of the arrests. Their children thrived in school. The adults found legitimate work that respected their safety. I never saw my biological family again. Letters came from prison. Tony filled with rage, Marco with self-pity, my mother with guilt. I ignored them all. Some betrayals run too deep, not for what was done, but for what they reveal about who people are when no one is watching. I had spent 23 years watching. The real victory wasn't the convictions. It wasn't even justice for the families who had lost everything to my family's greed. The true victory was leaving that courthouse as exactly who I had always been. Someone who protected people rather than exploiting them. Someone who chose the harder path because it was right. Someone who preferred to be underestimated and effective rather than respected and complicit. My family had spent decades insisting I wasn't strong enough. They were right. But I was strong enough for something far greater.